I'm going to wait one more minute.
You also can see names pop up this and this when they come in. You hear it, like WAD is on. Her name just, yeah, they have a photo. Her name just came up. One of the people on staff. That's really. Guess I gotta raise some money to get this. What you think, Aaron?
Yeah.
Well, for the Zoom license too, right?
Oh, how much is the Zoom license?
So we get into it annually. It used to be, I think we're spending $5,000 a year.
Is that for the whole university or that for the school?
Usually it's like $200 per person for a professional license.
Yeah.
That gives you access to 100 users, unlimited recordings. But yeah, so we do it. We basically, the school had bought it to the university license, so we have a site license for it, and it's been fantastic.
I think you can have it free Zoom, but it only lasts 40 minutes?
Yeah, 40.
That's good. So you get free Zoom for 40
We were
minutes.
thinking about that counseling, the remote counseling project over there.
So are we gonna use this with Filler, the dean of the law school, when we do it? Are we gonna use Zoom with him? That would be really nice if we could do that. Because they would have it, right, Penny?
Yeah.
The law school?
They
Maybe.
should.
Maybe.
I think the School of Education is probably one of the most technological advanced ones.
Isn't that?
Go
Go ahead, Department of
Don't usually hear that about
Education.
education.
No, you don't.
We're headed-
No, you don't. I came out of the Department of Education for like getting my master's and falling in love, and I finished my PhD. My mother and father had a fit. They had a fit.
So it happened.
I did 30 hours beyond.
So we're going to get started. Thank you all for being here today and online for our Dean's Lecture Series. Today we have a wonderful speaker who I had the opportunity to meet in the fall at the EST conference, and so happy that to come here and present at the Dean's Lecture. She's going to be presenting on the equity and civil rights imperative. It's a very provocative title. I like the title. Just a little bit of background. Andrea Custis is the president. She's a seasoned corporate executive. She has 30 years of sales, marketing, human capital, operating experience, 500 companies. Ms. Custis has been recognized by Ebony Magazine as one to watch, one of the network's journal's 25 influential Black women in business, and Executive of the Year by the Consortium of Information and Telecommunications Executive and Hispanic Support Organization. Wow, right? Yeah. That's amazing. And so we have the pleasure of having her in our company today to give our lecture series. So, right.
First of all, Penny, thank you for your kind words. Very nice. Thank you. Let me just say good morning to the students, to the faculty, to the guests of the Department of Education here at Drexel University. I'm honored to be here this morning. Penny, I want to first just give you big kudos and just appreciation for your innovative approach to education. You are truly an amazing educator. I want to also, from the bottom of my heart, thank President Fry for just really understanding the value of working with the community in this space. I look at his leadership, kudos to his civic engagement and understanding the value of children and family in the communities that surround Drexel University. So thank you on behalf of the Urban League movement that we have such great leaders in our community. Before I begin, I would like to just show you a brief video from, it's on Mark Morial, who is our national president of the Urban League. He is an amazing leader, a lawyer by education, former mayor of New Orleans. I would say a lot of what we do is all critical. Everything's equally critical, but we both believe that education is the key. It is the key to moving people out of poverty. It is the key to building economic wealth. So if we can, let's play the video of Mark Morial talking about the barriers to equity in education.
The Brown versus the Board of Education decision in 1954 is and was the most iconic, I think, civil rights moment when it comes to education, because here you had a Supreme Court made up of 9 white men, all born in the 1800s, who understood in writing that decision intuitively that separate or a segregated educational system was inconsistent with American values and the American Constitution. And the key figures in that case were, of course, the legendary Thurgood Marshall, who argued that case, one of 32 cases he argued before the United States Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice, Earl Warren, who authored that decision in 1954. In many respects, Brown versus Board launched the modern civil rights movement. The following year, there was the Montgomery bus boycott, and of course, continuing into the 50s and the 60s, a movement which transformed America and which still defines a vision I share for the future of this nation, which is a vision of a nation with equal opportunity for everyone. We have a two-front challenge. We have to protect past progress. In this environment where there are headwinds, political pushback coming from many quarters, including from the current administration, we have to protect the progress that we've made since 1954. But we also have to recognize that the progress we've made with 1954 has been insufficient. Our schools today may be as racially and as economically segregated as schools were 35 years ago. And while we've all focused on improving public education, from a National Urban League perspective, we've not, as a nation, embraced the principles of equality or equity. And equity is what's important, and that is to remove the historic barriers that have prevented young people to achieve, if you will, equal results and equal outcomes from their experience in public education. Secondly, I believe that we're trying to create a system where we recognize that to get equal outputs, we need equal inputs. We need to ensure that we have quality teachers in every school, that we have the proper class size in every school, that we have the resources to ensure that every school has science labs and technology and extracurricular activities, which are so essential, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whether it's the crafts, that helps young people, if you will, develop themselves as total human beings in this nation. So our fight is as challenging as it has ever been.
Okay, I couldn't say it better than Mark. That's why Mark said it. Would you agree with me?
Yeah,
Like, simply amazing. I'm so proud of him as our leader in the Urban League movement. He gets it. He's amazing. Every time I see him on CNN, MSNBC, I'm just proud to do the work that we do in the Urban League. So I want to do two things this morning. One is I want to tell you a little bit about the Urban League. I would be remiss if I don't speak about, I think, the amazing and worthwhile work that we do. And then I would like to talk about ESSA. So why don't we move right on? So our mission, it's a really long mission statement. Our mission is the achievement of economic self-reliance, and I'm going to say in social justice, right? So we're going to talk about what does self-reliance mean? How do you get a community to be economically self-reliant? How do you go about making sure there is social justice for all? So we do this in a couple of ways. Our core work is around several areas. One is advocacy. We will speak and speak out about injustices in the city, in the state, in the United States of America. And so I'll talk a little bit about what that means. We are very, very, we're very, like just fortunate, if I were to use a word, grateful to the work that we do with Dr. Height. Penny, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dr. Height was here before us in December. We have a great partnership, and we see about 1,100 kids a year, and I'll tell you some of the work that we do. And then employment, jobs, jobs, jobs. You cannot move people and lift them out of poverty unless they have an opportunity to develop, to get training, and to also be employed. And then we'll talk about entrepreneurship. There's another example of being absolutely self-reliant. Very important that we grow small businesses. Housing, that's another way to build wealth. And then health and wellness, and we'll talk about child care resources. So let's look at advocacy. If I had to pick some of our main areas, it would be education, probably would be the number one. Erin, who is here, who I was remiss in saying thank you, who's on our staff, Erin Kane, for the amazing work that we go throughout the city, throughout the state. We're like a traveling twosome that is out there constantly fighting for education. And one of the teams that we work with is called Pennsylvania School Works, led by Donna Cooper, who used to be the chief of staff for Governor Rendell. And we have gone to Harrisburg. We've talked to both Republicans and Democrats so that people understand the importance of funding education in the state of Pennsylvania, in the city of Philadelphia, the way it should be done. And I'll share some numbers with you soon. Civil rights, we're always going to speak up if we see injustices there, right? When the incident occurred at Starbucks, I had three things to say from the Urban League. The first item was that Mayor Kenney called the situation exactly what it was. He said, this is what discrimination looks like with where we are now, right? Whether it was implicit, explicit, that's what discrimination looks like. I also had an opportunity to say thank you to Commissioner Ross, who I think is an amazing police commissioner. But I also said right on TV that we missed the boat for Starbucks. We should have and could have de-escalated that situation. The two young men there were very calm. There was no outburst. That one absolutely could have been de-escalated. That did not have to end in an arrest. And then the other area I said is I think Starbucks, like any other major corporation, there's a time sometimes that you pause and you say, have I properly trained everyone? Does everybody understand what discrimination looks like? Are we an inclusive corporation? So I applaud Starbucks for literally shutting down a day. Think about the revenue and doing the right thing. One time is not enough. I am very confident they're continuing with the training and education. Voting rights, I cannot tell you how important it is. If you ask me right now, Andrea, what are you concentrating on this year? I would say the Urban League is absolutely concentrating on getting people to have a voice and understanding the importance of getting out to vote. We're going to meet with Drexel University's law department and their students. I'm so excited to work with the law students. We did some research on voter suppression for the state of Pennsylvania and for two other states. And now we're about also educating students and educating young people and educating older people about the importance of having a voice and letting your voice be heard. And how you do that is through voting. Monica, that's sitting here in the audience here, is an intern with the Urban League this summer. And Monica just recently had an opportunity to write an essay about why voting is important. And she voted on her college campus. And it's going to be shown in the State of Black America that comes out from the National Urban League. So kudos to you, Monica, for getting out there as a young person and understand the importance of voting. I would also say one equal to voting rights is the census. We have got to make sure that everybody is concerned. I'm going to let the Supreme Court look at the issue on are we are you a citizen or not? I think that's a dangerous question to put on the census. I think you will block the Latinx vote. That's my personal opinion. And I think some of the research says that. And also on health equity, that African Americans and other people that are poor have access to health care. So let me tell you real briefly, and I'll go through these quickly. On youth development, we work with the Philadelphia public school system, and we see about 1,100 students a year, and we're doing two things with them. You'll be proud of it. We're getting them ready to go to college. Hopefully Drexel University is one of the universities of choice. And then we're getting them ready, if they're not going to college or university, to get ready for a career. And then we also have a STEM program for the little babies. They're adorable. They think tadpoles and all of that. Like, it's amazing stuff. I can't wait. I'm going out to River Bend, I think next week, to be with them. Employment, this is what I'm going to say. Jobs, jobs, jobs. I asked Drexel University, I asked all of the communities in the city of Philadelphia, please help us to train and develop and employ the people that come through our different programs. You cannot lift yourself up from poverty unless you have a job. I think this is one, we're a nonpartisan organization that I can get both Republicans and Democrats to agree that you want to make individuals self-reliant. They want to raise families. They want to pay taxes. So I will continue to ask Drexel, other corporations in the city of Philadelphia to please join with me in partnering and giving our citizens an opportunity to work. Entrepreneurship, this is one of the exciting ones. I have a son who's an entrepreneur. It's probably one of the toughest things that you can do. To be African American is really difficult in any city to be able to get contracts and to be able to get loans to grow your business. So we do two things in the Urban League. We've had an entrepreneurship for 10 years. We celebrated that this year. And we help people to start up a business, and then we help people to grow their business. How we measure that is those companies that we're working with, do they employ people? At the companies that we worked with last year to employ almost 70 people. That's really good. That's great for the economy. And then also we were able to get capital and contracts for $4 million. That's not a sneeze. I'm extremely proud of that economic impact on the city of Philadelphia. Housing is another area. In fact, we were recognized by Mark L'Oreal this year in New Orleans at one of our conferences for the amazing work that we do in housing. We do three things. We help people to purchase a home. I don't know about you, but many of us, our mothers and fathers, were able to start wealth by purchasing a home. Now, back during the day, you certainly weren't talking about flipping homes and all of that great stuff we do now. Usually what happened is people bought a home, right? And then they kept it until, usually some of them, until you died or you passed it over. We didn't know about flipping and doing other than getting your home appreciated and then selling. So we help people to buy the first time. We also know individuals that are in trouble either because you lose a job or because medical situation or whatever. So we go to court every week and we help families to stay in their homes and we pull them out of foreclosure. And I feel really good about that. I see individuals coming into the center when our counselors are bringing them back, and many of them have tears and many of them are so appreciative of the work that we do. I'm going to use an example because I just want to make sure I'm very comfortable talking about race. So I met a young Caucasian male that came back from court and he had some tears and I said, "What's wrong? Are you okay? Are you okay?" He said, "I'm just so grateful that somebody was here for me because I tried and nothing happened." And now he's looking at the counselors. And I said to the counselors, he will never ever forget this moment. And if it also makes him pay it forward and also have a different view or appreciate these Black women who were in here, that's why I'm here. It's like, that's what brings joy to me. So I just use that as an example. And I'm very proud of the work. And the third area we do is what we call financial wellness. Many of you that are sitting here and those guests that are on Zoom, you've had the opportunity to have mothers or fathers or somewhere in your life teach you about financial wellness. Well, many people don't have that. So we certainly have taken the time to make sure we educate our clients and make sure that they understand how to save, how to invest in some of the basic things. Health and wellness is basically pretty much a new initiative for us. It's an old initiative for the National Urban League, but when I came here a year and a half ago, we had a board retreat, and I asked the board if we could really get involved and really pay attention to what was going on in health and wellness. And let me just tell you why. When I had left Philadelphia for a while, so I've been back now a year and a half. And when I first came back, I started driving around, and I said, oh my gosh, I see dialysis on every corner like it's a Starbucks. I don't remember that when I left here 10 years ago. And then I looked and I started looking at research data, and I looked at African Americans compared to Caucasians in the city of Philadelphia, and I saw such a big gap in diabetes, in heart disease, in cholesterol. And I said, oh my gosh, we have to do something about this. We really have to get involved. So what we're doing is education. And we're doing education in a number of ways, and we're partnering with those that have an MD after their name. I am not a clinician, nor do I think that I'm Dr. Custis, almost, had I finished that darn PhD. But I also understand that, and by the way, my daughter is an anesthesiologist, and she said, please don't think that you can play in the medical field. I need you to understand who you are and where you are. So let me tell you what I know, Penny. I'm an educator. That's what I can do. I can inform and educate you. So we're doing a number of things. We're working, I'm really proud of what we're working on, childhood immunization, and that's going extremely well. We also have what we call child care resources, and we have a contract with the state and federal government where if you're ready to go back to work, we help you in the sense that if you are eligible and you meet that criteria, we will pay your child care provider directly. And so that's a pretty phenomenal program that's impacted 7,100 kids who have had an opportunity to be in a great childhood situation and be educated early on. Ideally, their parents wouldn't be able to afford that, so we help them with that. So now let's move into to talking about ESSA, right? So let's talk about this, and I just want to read Mark's quote. You saw what he said, but I think this is worthy of it. So in 1954, that's when this began, the Supreme Court said education must be available to all on equal terms. That was real clear what the law said. 65 years later, where we are is that we neither honor nor bring justice to the spirit of the law or to the future of our nation's children. We've made progress, but we have so much more to do. So as I look at many of you in this room, I look at what Penny has done, I look at the Department of Education throughout all the universities and colleges. We depend on you. This is where it's going to absolutely start, continue, and where you have an impact that you can change what's going on in the educational system. Let many of us work on that funding part, right? You don't have time to work on that funding part, some of you. We're going to ask you, though, Erin is especially going to ask you to help us with that and to help us in some other areas. But when I look at you, what I see is an opportunity for a huge impact if everybody gets it right at every university and college in the United States of America, right? So let's talk, I love this slide. This is my favorite. We talk about it, but I'm a visual person. You know how we all learn? I'm visual. So let's talk about equality and equity. To me, this says it well. Equality says that I'm going to give everybody the same thing, right? Everybody's got a little stool. But look what happens when you put all of them on a little stool. That means that's equal. That's equality, right? That's what it does. When you start talking about looking at things through an equity lens, it's a whole different conversation. What equity says is I will give each student, each child what they need in order to be successful. That's all it is. That's exactly what it is. So if you look at what's depicted here, you see 3 different little individuals, and you see each of them has something different because everybody doesn't need the same, right? So that's what we try to do always when we talk about ESSA, that we try to look at it through an equity lens. And I think you will be really clear if you weren't from now on, because I just keep picturing this every time we talk about equality and equity. So Erin, thank you for that cute little photo. It's my favorite. I want a poster of it. I got a poster in my office. Okay. All right, so what is ESSA? It's Every Student Succeeds Act. So when we look at 1965, we had the Elementary and Secondary Act, and basically what it says is that all kids, regardless of your race, regardless of your background, regardless of your zip code, regardless of disability, that every child should be able to have quality education, right? Let me pause here for a minute. Would you agree with me? Let's just look at the state of Pennsylvania. Let's just look at the city of Philadelphia. Would you agree with me that in many and most cases that your zip code determines the quality of your education? That makes me sad. Literally, it makes me sad. I get sad and I get angry. But more importantly, to me, it's a call of action for us to do things, right? So you can take the tears, you can take the anger, but what do you turn it into? And that's what we're trying to do in the Urban League movement, right? To make progress on this and to change the fact that depending on where you are in North Philly, South Philly, or wherever you are, that your zip code determines whether or not you get quality education. So you had that in 65, come down a little. So then in 2001, we had the No Child Left Behind. And for some reason, I have to tell you this, don't ask me why, that title, people know that title. When you say ESSA, for some reason, see, they're all agreeing with me, Erin. They're agreeing. For some reason, it's not resonating. But when you say No Child Left Behind, I can talk to people from all different ethnicities, different backgrounds, no matter wherever you are in the United States, and it resonated. And basically, the No Child Left Behind that President Bush signed, it was well intended, but what happened is there were consequences if you did not make certain goals, right? So therefore, then it had unintended outcomes and wasn't the type of outcomes that we wanted, right? And I understood why we did what we did, but sometimes when you make something punitive, it's not as effective as when you recognize progress or when you recognize positive and goodness. So we had that. Then we come to 2015, when President Obama signed into effect Every Student Succeeds Act. And the difference here, excuse me, what I can see is that there is recognition of standards. There's recognition that every child is not starting from the same point. And so there is a lot of goodness in how we can approach it. I get an opportunity through the National Urban League to talk to all of my peers in conferences and convening sessions. And there are some common themes, how all of us are doing it, but dependent on the city, dependent on where they are, some of us have different approaches to it, and it's very effective to where we are. So let's talk about, I'm always one, so what? So I'm a big so what. And if you can't answer that so what, then I think we have an issue. So why is ESSA important? So nationally, school districts, this is disturbing to me, that serve children of color, they roughly get, and it varies, but this is roughly, they get about 13% less per student in funding compared to schools that are predominantly Caucasian. Do you understand what I'm saying there? So you have schools of color and you have schools that are dominated by Caucasians. And when you look at the funding for those districts and those schools, it's like 13% less for those folks of color. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a big problem that we have to solve in the United States. So when I first started working on ESSA, I thought I knew, but I continually am learning. And the piece that I almost could not accept was that when you look at the state of Pennsylvania, it's startling to me. Of all the states, we're number 46. Penny, how the heck did we get to be 46 when it comes to funding per student? How are all these other states doing phenomenally better on the funding issue? I'm not going to get into that, nor am I going to get into how that's solved. I don't want to do that because there's a lot of issues that are, I would say they're very hot. They cause sometimes people to scream and holler. So we won't talk about that. But question? Oh, this is now. This is right now. We just presented and talked to both Republicans and Democrats in Harrisburg. We will continue to go back. If you remember, Governor Wolf on February the 5th announced the budget for the whole state of Pennsylvania. And so they will not vote on it until June. So although we were up there beforehand, because you don't want to do it afterwards, you want to start doing your ask beforehand, we will also now go back because we're not pleased with the funding for basic education. Okay, 3 different buckets, right? Basic education, CTE for the technical piece of it, and then also for education for those who have disabilities. So when you look at that, to see that we're number 46 is unacceptable. The other thing is that when you look at other states and you look at the gap between the highest spending and the highest funding for students and the lowest, we have the largest gap in all the school districts. That's crazy. In other words, here's what we have here. We have the haves and the have-nots. That's what that says. Let's just bring that forward and call it what it is, right? Not good. You agree with me? Not good. And I know the people on Zoom agree with me. I can hear them applauding right now. You guys can't, but I have an imaginary little earpiece and they're applauding right now. The other thing is that in Philadelphia, and I don't know if Dr. Hite talked about it. Did he talk about funding or was he being great? Did he talk about it? Like, we need about $966 million in order to have the proper funding that we need. Let me just say this to you. I wish Mayor Kenny was on here because I'd give him a big kiss and a big hug and just say, thank you, Mayor Kenny, for understanding and getting the importance of funding education. He is a friend of education. He is an advocate of education, and I am so proud of him. And I know Dr. Hite also feels definitely appreciated by the mayor and that cabinet. The other area is when you start looking, remember we talked about Philadelphia and the surrounding area in the state. So look at the funding here. If you were in Lower Marion, and that's where my kids went to school, right? Not in public school, but private at the time. But when you look at that 26,000, right, in Lower Marion, wealthy area. They have the tax base, right? They can fund the schools. Now let's look at Pittsburgh, another one not to complain about, 22,000. And then you look at Hazleton, 11,000. When we look at Philadelphia, and you probably can't see it, it's down here at the 13,000. So look at the difference in funding. We're going to change that. We have to change that, and we will do that. So why does it matter? Here's why it matters. We've seen, and I want to just almost read this one. Low-income students and students of color are more likely than their income and white counterparts to be taught by an ineffective teacher. Let's talk about this a little bit later. That's disturbing to me. When I get ready to close, I want you to think about that and tell me what should be done, or what ideas do you have, or what can we do, right? We've got some things in place, but that's not a fluke that occurs. That's not good. And that's the research throughout, not here in Pennsylvania, here, but throughout the United States. This was a national research. And so we see this. How could that be in urban areas and other schools where that occurs? Not a good situation. Why else does it matter that this is disturbing? Philadelphia is working on this. By the way, again, these are national figures here. This is not Pennsylvania, this is national throughout the United States. What it says here is that 16% of the public school kids, K to 12, are Black students, and yet they represent 39% of out-of-school suspensions. That's also not a fluke. That occurs. That's shameful. That says there's a problem. If I gave you some information and some data now on arrests, you will see the same thing in the United States. You will see it for Black kids, and you will see it for Latinx kids. You will see it. You will see it for policing and so on. That's not good. That's shameful. I will tell you that the school system here in Philadelphia has done a great job and decided it was important. And it wasn't just suspensions. They also worked on arrests. And they started up here on arrests, and now they're down here. Did Dr. Haidt talk anything about that? He should feel so proud of the work that they've done over the last couple of years, that I believe he has a model that really should go throughout the United States. It worked, and everybody was involved. Penny, you will appreciate this. The teachers were intimately involved. They have to be, right? They're the ones who make the call. The principals were involved. The students were involved. The parents were involved. And that's why with everybody participating, they were able to move the numbers down. It's almost like maybe I need a timeout, right? Maybe I need the teacher to have some other intervention skills, that I need to teach you some intervention skills when you see somebody misbehaving or getting ready to lose it, or they lost it. Here's some things that you can do. So I'm proud of the work that we've done. Why else does it matter? Again, numbers that I don't like. The national graduation rate is 84%. 70%, 76% for Black students, and 75% for Latinx students, compared to 88% of white students. That's a big gap from the 76 to the 88. Those are bodies, those aren't numbers, those are bodies attached to those percents, right? In Pennsylvania, it's even more startling. Here we go again. Numbers that we're not proud of. 73% for Black students graduate, compared to 91% for white students. What are we doing wrong, and what should we be doing, right? That's why ESSA can really help in this area, and really going down underneath and looking at that data and that research and putting plans together to change that. So there's a couple of key principles that I believe are absolutely needed. And I have a little book, and maybe Aaron later you can get them, the little black book that we have on the principles for ESSA. So one of the first principles is that our education system, when you're preparing historically underserved students of color, English as a second language, students with disabilities, we have to do a better job preparing these individual groups. If you just try to do one size fits all, it's not going to work. We won't make any progress in really preparing them. So as the school system and everything that we do in the education system, what you do here at Drexel University, you have to look at those individual groups, and we have to have a different approach. We have to try different strategies. You guys are so intelligent. You absolutely are doing these things and are capable of doing more. Also, principle 2, and I don't need to say this, I think I've said it enough, is underfunded schools. Golly, I'd like to say another word, they need to be funded. Can we please fund the underfunded schools of kids that look like me and look like Monica? Can we please try to do a better job and make our legislators understand that you have to step up to the plate and do that throughout the United States. Principle 3, school systems must identify, attract, and support a strong, diverse teacher workforce. I have to tell you, for me personally, this was a learning. I did not know this when I began to do the work with my peers and with other people on education. I come from a background where a lot of my cousins, my sister is a school teacher in Howard County in Maryland. I come from, I'm fortunate, very, very fortunate. I'm very blessed, a very well-educated family, right? Dad went to Cornell. I mean, you do that. You went to a HBCU. I went to a HBCU, Morgan State University, and then I didn't know about Drexel University, so I went to University of Penn, but I did not know about Drexel. Had I known, I would have been here. I just was uninformed, so you can give me an F- on that. I didn't know this was a problem until I started listening to everybody across the United States. The teacher pipeline, as well as principals, it's a problem. And I know a lot of principals in the Maryland area. A lot of my sister's friends are principals. So I saw people that looked just like me, tons. But yet when I talked to the superintendent there, as well as the superintendent throughout the country, teachers and principals are a problem. And I said, why? I don't know. But they said it is the universities also that stamp whether or not the principal gets through, that they come through programs at the colleges and universities. So here's what I would say, my advice, is that if the right people don't come through here and are not qualified, don't do the stamp. And I know that sounds trite, but you don't get to go out and be a principal if you are not amazing, wonderful, talented, qualified, you love, you care about the school system. I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
I was just gonna say, you're not crazy, it didn't look like this for you.
No, it did. Okay, thank you. What's your name? Susan? It didn't look like
Statistically, this has
this.
been a shift.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different research around it, with a few hypotheses. I would say that the policy people have sort of decided why, but you're not crazy. It didn't look like
Okay,
this.
because I just wasn't informed and I didn't see that. And I was exposed to people that looked like me that were principals and teachers. Fourth principle, and this is one that the Urban League of Philadelphia is working on. And we're not going to give up on this, and we're going to continue to do what I call really thought work and making sure that this happens. And that is that parents and families and communities and students need to be heard. And here's what I say. This is just Andrea Custis's view, is that I think sometimes in the African American community, sometimes I think that we think that you have to be a SME, a subject matter expert, to have something to say. And I've seen when we've had open forums, and I've been with Dr. Height when I've seen the school board and him, I think sometimes we think that you have to know it all. You have a student, and whether you have a child who is a student or you're in the community, you have a right to have input and for it to be valued. And I want that input, and I know you want that input. That's why President Fry here is doing what he's doing on civic engagement, because you don't get to sit here and also not have the input of the community and what they need and what they want and what they are, what their priorities are. And I applaud you here at Drexel University for doing a great job in that. That's the way the school system has to work, right? So in the Urban League of Philadelphia, we are really pulling together parents, local legislators, students, so that they can advocate for what they need and what they want. And if I'm not mistaken, Erin, don't we have something with the students coming up real soon in the William Penn School? So we're going to be working on that. Next principle, and this is one that can bring tears to your eyes. A school has to be a safe, nurturing environment for our students. Everybody agrees? I got to recently hear Brian Stevenson. I'm going to ask you to write his name or remember his name. Brian Stevenson came from a very poor environment right here in the Philadelphia area. First to go to school, and his family to go to college. Graduated from Harvard, the law school, teaches at NYU, and primarily works with inmates who are on death row. He recently came and talked at the Widener series at the Kimmel Center, and there was about 30 of us who got to have dinner with him. And this is when my father's right. When you get there early, you get a lot. So he walked in the door. It was only 3 of us, and I said, "Oh, you were here just to meet me and to talk." So I got to do a one-on-one for about 15 minutes before other people came in the room. We had an amazing dialogue. So I said to him, "How do we change education? What do we do?" He said, "There's a lot of things." And I'm going to say something to you that you're probably not going to accept. And so he said, when the kids are coming to you in Philadelphia, into the school system, they're traumatized when they come. He said, everything that they have to do at home and what's in the street, that's trauma. So you're trying to teach kids who are already coming in with trauma. He said, the last thing that I need a teacher to do is yell and be military about it. The kids need love. They need affection. They need nurturing. They need care. So he said, one of the first things is look at all of your interventions about what you're doing in the school system when it comes to trauma. Because he said it's a tough job for the teachers. It's a tough job for the teachers. And I'm not even going to talk about the recent incident we just saw in the city of Philadelphia, right, with the teacher. That was horrible. And there needs to be criminal charges, not just that she got fired. And it's not just that little girl who got 7 stitches who was traumatized. Can you imagine the rest of the students in there? I don't know about you, but if I was a student, I would be deathly afraid that the next teacher is also going to throw me up against the wall. That's not just about the little girl, which was horrible, had that been my little girl, but also about the other students who witnessed it and saw it. So I beg you, I ask you to please, when you go out there to teach, make it a loving, nurturing environment so that the kids feel safe and they feel loved so that they can learn. Next principle, school districts and states must take prompt and thoughtful action when the schools are under preparing our students. We have to do that. We have to make up some time here. You heard Mark speak about that, about the barriers to equity. This is what he's referring to. So we have a lot of work to do. So here's my takeaways, real simple and real easy, right? Real easy. The first one is love your students. I don't say it lightly, just simply love your students. I think your profession is one of the most important, vital professions in the United States. I look at my sister every day and I say to her, how do you do what you do? Every time we talk. And you know what she said to me? You don't do it for the money. It's the same thing that people who work in nonprofits, they're mission driven. They're not doing it for the money. You're just absolutely not doing it for the money, right? And so she said, I'll never make what you made in corporate America. She said, but I love what I do every day. She said, and she works with a lot of kids who have special needs and autistic children, and she's a reading specialist. Think about what she does. About 3 years ago, one of her, not longer than that, that was the other award she got. She got an award when President Bush was in office because one of the parents wrote a note and said everybody had given up on their child to be able to read. Everybody had given up. Not being mean or anything, not being whatever. This wasn't even racist. This was a little white boy that was there. It wasn't racist, whatever. It wasn't motivated by anything, but they just felt that he wasn't going to be able to learn how to read. And my sister was determined to help the child read. The mother wrote a note and said, you changed my child's life. My child can read now. Their life will be totally different, that they won't be illiterate, but they'll be able to read a sign, that they'll be able to read and enjoy. And she told my sister that there would be nobody more important in her child's life than what Yvette was. Boy, I don't know about you, but when she read me the thing, I was literally crying on the phone because I was so proud of her, but I was so proud of what teachers do every day. I mean, you really do God's work, and you have an opportunity to impact kids in such an amazing way. As a parent, we give you our child. I can't give you anything more important than to give you my babies, right? And you have an opportunity to make them believe and feel that they can be anything in life. And so I thank you for that. Set the bar high. Don't think because I'm coming from a certain zip code that I'm not as capable of Mary and in Lower Marion. I am capable. Give me an opportunity. Set that bar high. Don't look and say, oh, I'm going to lower the standards. Please don't lower the standards. Don't do that. That's discrimination to me. I am capable and you can get me there. So set that bar so high for those students, and especially those students that are in certain zip codes. And then the other one is just know when you make a difference for one child, you change the world. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Where are we with time, Erin or Penny? Are we done or do we have time?
We have some time for questions.
We have a couple questions or comments. So my question is, what do you think we should be doing as teachers? What more can we do? Any ideas, or where are you on that? Or questions, comments, anything is welcome. And Erin, if there are any ideas, can we make sure we jot them down? Yes. And also for the people on, Eric, for the people that are with us via Zoom, can they ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for your comments and really for what I heard as your passion
Thank you.
in this. And you said, what can we do? I'm going to brag on our undergraduate program a little bit. There's a lot of research that talks about how do you prepare our students. A Drexel undergraduate student is not likely to have gone to an under-resourced school for a number of reasons. That's a fact of our undergraduates. We do encourage, we have a lot of scholarships, but our average student doesn't. So how do we prepare our students in what we openly market as an urban-focused program? And what we've done under the leadership of Sarah Ulrich and a number of other people is really develop residencies, because living with those schools, and I don't mean residency like you live in a house, but they do 2 6-month-long student teaching stunts, so to speak. One is juniors, one is seniors. They're in schools before that. But as our second set of residents are finishing up now, and I'm in the field with them, their comfort level, they're being able to see how they fit into these communities. They don't feel as other. There's no such thing as not feeling other. I get it. They get it. But I would like to say that time matters. And one of the things we can think of in teacher preparation while we deal with these gaps, and we can talk about why those gaps might exist in recruiting right now, is the idea of residency. The longer time that teachers have working in schools that don't look like the schools they went to, the more likely they are to be able to get to their effective ideas, giving love, providing that really great critical thinking question when they're when they become part of the school culture. And I think it's an important movement, and I'd like to see other schools of education think about adding those residencies.
Do you think that's that innovative teaching that I talked about in the beginning from Dr. Hemrick here? Yeah. She has an innovative approach to teaching. It's to education.
She has an innovative approach to leadership that lets the people under her innovate within our spaces of expertise, which is a really exciting place to be working.
Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for doing that. Erin, that's one that we should be sharing when we come back together, when we convene, like with the National Urban League and with other ESSA experts, that it is something that works. And if they want to reach out to Dr. Hemrick and talk about what that looks like and what's the structure of that, I think that's one that we absolutely need to put out there. So thank you for sharing. That's great. And if I can, we have something similar to that. For instance, Monica is here but usually Monica looks like the people that are in this room. Usually they are Caucasian females and Caucasian males that I get from the Philadelphia Center, because where they're coming from is Midwest. They think they want to work in urban America. Most of them have never been to a major city. And so when they choose to do that, and I have an opportunity to touch them, that's like almost that residence. You get to work, and I always make sure I'm very greedy. Even if I place them somewhere else, I have a lot to do with what they do. And at that time, and that matters. One of the women that came from Hope, Angela, brought her parents in at the end of her internship to meet me. And the first thing I said is, thank you for letting me have your daughter, because I'm quite sure you looked at some criminal statistics and you looked at the poverty level and you looked at some things in Philadelphia and said, oh my God, I don't know whether I want to give you my daughter. I said, thank you, first of all, for trusting us and lending your daughter to us for a semester. And Angela will never be the same person that she was when she came. First of all, she was inquisitive and she cared, but when she left with a love and a mission and knew exactly what she wanted to do for people of color. And I'm so proud of that. That's the goodness. So thank you for sharing that. Any other questions, comments, anybody?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for your
What's
talk.
your name?
My name's Sarah Ulrich.
Sarah, I kept looking at you. You have such an inviting face.
Oh, thank you.
You really do. You have such a friendly face. I kept looking at her. She was like, stop looking at me.
Well, your talk was wonderful, and I just kept thinking, my goodness, every single one of our undergraduates should be in this room listening to it. But just to piggyback on that piece about residencies and talking about some of the wonderful things that Dr. Haidt has done in the School District of Philadelphia, he is funding residencies at the graduate level, at the post-bac level, for career changers to fill high need areas and do similar to what MJ was saying, work and learn in a school in Philadelphia, in a high need school, not the highest need, but a high need school where they can learn and grow as new teachers. And so he's really building something similar to what MJ was saying. At the graduate level, he funded 75 residencies for next year, working with university partners across the city, Penn, Drexel, Temple, Relay, GSE. And so he should really be commended for that. We're part of the National Center for Teacher Residencies, Drexel's the only region, I would say. But Philadelphia is doing something groundbreaking there, in that they are putting the money in, they're putting the funding into it. And they're building an intentional pipeline where folks will not just teach for a year or two in the city and then there'll be this mass flight to the suburbs and to affluent school districts. But he is building an intentional pipeline for folks to begin their careers and remain in Philadelphia as teachers.
Excellent.
So
Thank you for sharing.
We commend the district for that. And
wonderful.
We're thrilled to be a part of it.
They're putting their money where their mouth is.
Absolutely.
Right? Great, the funding. Eric, anything from the people on Zoom, or we're good?
We're
Okay.
good so
Let's
far.
take one more and then we'll close up. Yes, sir. Oh. Oh, you're just the mic holder. Okay. All right. I thought you were getting ready to come up to me with the mic, and I was like, well,
He's been
okay.
known. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for this. This is great. Just to give you a little personal background, before Drexel, I worked at PCCY with Donna Cooper, so
There you go.
very well connected to some of this work, and had more than a few bus rides to Harrisburg and kind of add some of these things. And so
Donna will make you work for her, won't she?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, she is.
Even after I was here, she's still.
Exactly. Sometimes I think she thinks that she's
never
run
off
off. Yeah.
So my question goes kind of towards funding, right? So for Philly fully funded, right, you would need like short of $1 billion, right?
Yes.
And then we saw the report a few days ago about what it would take to get all of our schools up to code. Like, forget having resources, being structurally sound, right? So, how do we get there? How do we get the proper funding for our schools? It's not that easy to answer, but
It's not easy
how do
to
we?
answer.
What are some things that maybe people in this room should know about?
Yeah.
And maybe take with us.
So I think the mayor just announced that he has figured out, it has not been shared, but he has figured out how to get that funding. And so he's getting ready to share that. So I'm going to wait and see when Kenny announces that. It's going to be interesting because the scuttlebutt and other folks that are in Philadelphia, they're like, we don't want a property increase, right, for taxes. Well, I think we're pretty good at that. I mean, you know, could we do it? But it's not getting rave reviews. The other thing that he did, controversial, whatever, was the soda tax, right? We're not even going to talk about that because I'm almost scared to talk about that. Wow, you talk about two different sides on the soda tax. Interesting. I was just with Jeff, the head of ShopRite stores. So you talk with him, then you go and talk with other folks. It's a different view, right? So that's another one. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get that without an increase in taxes of some sort. So he said that he has the plan. Did any of you read that? He just announced that, I think, like maybe a couple days ago, but it has not been shared. So I'm going to wait to see how that's done. But just remember, here's the piece that's real difficult. When you look at, and it is what it is, when you look at Marion, I'm just using them as an example, and you look at West Philly, where we are today, you know, how do you fund the schools? You know, basically funding comes from the taxes, right? What am I putting in there? So if you're in an area that is depressed in many ways and financially, it's very difficult to come up with the funding for that to happen. So that's why I'm real interested whether or not he's moving money or creating some new ways to look at it. You know, one of the things that we do, and again, I'm not weighing in on this, but you know, we have an abatement for those folks that want to come into the city. Do we still need to do that? Or are there masses of people who are moving from the suburbs to get here? I don't think there's a pipeline problem, this from what I see, of individuals moving either from other cities or states, but more importantly, from the suburbs coming into Philadelphia. So I want you to think about some of those abatements and for how long and how much money that is. That's an interesting piece right there. So I'm quite sure he's far smarter than what I am. I'm speculating a number of things that he could have in the plan, but I'm really waiting with bated breath to see what that plan looks like. And trust me, it will be scrutinized, but will also be on the front page so that everybody can see it, so that we can examine and analyze it. Okay, so I'm going to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. Penny, thank you for this invite.
Before we all leave, and before you step down.
Oh. Okay. Who doesn't like a gift? Like really? Who doesn't like a gift?
People that know me know I like to give gifts, right? So we want to thank you for gracing us with your presence today and speaking on such an important topic. I learned a lot. It was very engaging, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So it's just a small token of our appreciation.
Oh, I wonder why it's this color.
Thank you so much. Let's
Thank
give
you.
her another round.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the folks that joined us. Thank them for the time that they gave this morning.
We have refreshments in the back. If you'd like some time, you can talk to Andrea, have some refreshments, and just be a little informal. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Oh, gosh. Oh my God.
Use it all. Tonight you got to send our posters.
I didn't know that. I'm learning.
We took